Hey everybody, Ron Measures here again. A few months ago, I bought a piece of marcibit meteorite, it's a slice, and I re-etched it to show off the wood and sun pattern. It came out so well that I wanted to show it off. I wanted to build a nice lit frame for it. But it's not a palisade, so I had to light up from the front. Well, the results I got weren't so great, so I've been thinking about how to redo it, and I came up with an idea for a frame light. Now, you can purchase these, but I like to build things. They're kind of expensive, so I have a lot of spare time in my hands these days. So I'm going to try and build something that does the job out of just simple PVC parts. I have some LEDs from another project and connectors and the power supply, so I thought, why not? So I'm going to give it a go. Okay, so the first thing I need are my parts. So I'm going to make it out of PVC, and I got some scrap PVC pipe right here. It's a 1/2 inch. Doesn't matter the thickness that you use. This is schedule 80, I believe. And I need something to tie the parts together. So this is a bag of old PVC fittings. And I'm looking for a straight through. And there's some, there we go, straight through and 45s. So I need something that I can tie something in this way and something, piece out each way for the light. So we're going to use that. And further, I think back here in all my junk, I have some old lamp all thread. So what's going to happen? Here we go. There's a little piece of all thread I had from an old lamp repair I did years ago. And what's going to happen? This is going to have the wires coming down the center. Going to tie into here. And a piece is going to come off each side. Now I'm going to cut a 90-degree wedge out of this about, back to there with my tables, with my radial arm saw actually. And that's a little tricky, so I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I have to figure it out. So let's see how we're going to proceed here. Okay, I have the fine tooth saw blade installed on my radial arm saw. What I did, I created a groove right here to hold the PVC so that I can put this in here, and it'll set it 90 degrees to right in line with the saw blade. The saw blade is slightly off the ground, so I don't hit the bottom. I'm just going to kiss the top. Now I can hold my hand way back here, keep myself safe. So let's give this a go here. Let's see what happens. I'm going to rotate this 90, just like that. I'm going to cut it again. Keep them nice and straight. Don't get your hand near the saw blade, of course. Here we go. Okay, so I've got two cuts now, about 90 degrees apart. Doesn't matter if it's accurate or not. So next I'm going to chop off about that much, and that'll give me my piece to put the LEDs in. Okay, now I've got my cut. Now I want to cut this down to about here, just to give it a rough cut. So I got my PVC pipe cutter, and we're just going to chop that whole piece off, just like that. There we go, and my piece is now, there we have it. That's going to be the barrel for the light. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to cut this in half. So let's measure it, see how long I've got. I only need about 3 inches on the side. So this is 7.5 inches right there. So let's mark it 3 3/4. Right, so 3 3/4 is right there. Doesn't have to be accurate right now because we're going to trim this off again later. And get our cutter out again. And here we go. Okay. Okay, so there's my 2 halves. Now these are going to go into here. 1/2 there and 1/2 there. And what I'm going to do is on the back side right here, I'm going to drill a hole to fit the all thread The alpha is going to go through, and I'll have a nut on each side to hold it in place. And that makes the main part of the light. So far, so good. The next thing I want to do is glue these together. So I've got my red hot blue glue and my purple primer. I'm just going to real quick put these together. So let's do one at a time here. Let's prime that. Prime that. Boy, this stinks. Hate the smell of MEK. Alright, here's my glue.
I do this quite a bit. I have sprinkler system in my backyard, so all this stuff sitting around. That stinks. A lot of airflow through here. Doors open, windows, still stinks. Alright, there's the first one. Doesn't matter how neat or sloppy you are, we're going to paint this, I think, black later on. Alright, there's the first joint. Alright, let that set for a moment. Stiffen up, that's pretty good. Let's get the second one in there. Alright, try the insides. Okay, got my glue. Nick. Good. See all over the place. Good. No, it's not plumbing, but I still think they do a nice neat job. Yeah.
Everything is to line these up, so I'm just going to eyeball it. So that looks pretty good right there. Got a nice straight. Yeah, that's good. All right, so what I want to do, I have this opening. Now if the picture is, let's say, the picture's right here, I want this to point down slightly so it illuminates the picture from an angle. So what I need to do is put this rod so that it goes in just about like that. So right where this edge crosses this fatter part, I'm going to put a hole right dead center. So it points the opening about 45 degrees down. I think that'll be just about right. Okay, I have marked the center of the fatter piece here, and I put a little pock mark right in the center so that my drill goes right in and doesn't travel. Let's go ahead and chuck this up and put a hole through there. All right, in there. Now my drill has a nice little point on it, right there if you can see it. It's kind of a guide, if you call these drills, but let's go ahead and put right in that little mark, center it, and go to town. There we go. Okay. And one more time, clear all the debris here. Alright. My drill needs a little bit more power, I think. There we go. Clear out the hole a little bit. Yeah. Alright, so we got our hole drilled. Now we'll put the pipe in there and make sure it fits. So here's my pipe over here. And let's take a look at it. Oh, perfect. Good tight fit. I can even screw it in there and put the nut on very easily. Okay, so the hole is drilled. I sanded out the edges a little bit to smooth it out and kind of make it a little pretty. So when I put the pipe in, the opening in the PVC is now positioned about 45 degrees down. So the picture's here. Illuminate the picture, and I left a little bit of adjustment. The way I'm going to build this, I can adjust it up and down a little bit so I can kind of orient the light where I want it. So I think we're good to go on to the next step. Looking good so far. Right, so I put the pieces together now. I've got the tubing connected to the PVC, a little nut right there, and if you look inside, there's the other nut right there. I had to use a pair of hemostats. These have little grabbers on it. You can lock in the nut. Makes it a little easier to do it. Otherwise, it's hit and miss. So I've got that. Now I think next step is we're going to put the LEDs inside. Looking pretty good so far. So next step of the process, I bought these LEDs off of Amazon about a year ago for some other projects. And I've got quite a few left over. So I'm going to take a few. These come on a roll, and they are self-adhesive. Just peel the tape off the back and stick them on. So I need to see how many I have to do. So if you notice on these LEDs, these little two solder tabs right there, they curve out every 2.5 inches or so. This is where you have to cut the LED tape or to have a complete circuit. So you have to cut to the nearest point of the length. So I found out that this is all I need right here is about 2 sections. So I'm going to cut that right there. Let's do that. So it's 2 little copper tabs. And right there, boom, done. Easy peasy. Okay, I've already applied the LEDs. See them right inside there. Now I've also gone ahead and cut down the all thread to about 6.5 inches. And before I paint this, I'm going to take some 5/16 heat shrink. No, I'm sorry, it's 7/16 heat shrink. And I'm going to put it on the all thread to cover up those threads. And of course I'll get a little bit longer piece. But before I paint it, I want everything together. I want the heat shrink on the brass. I want this painted black. I'm going to mask this area off so I don't paint the LEDs. And this is the hardware I'm going to use for attachment. It'll be modified a little bit, bent, maybe a couple of screw holes. But that might work. Again, more pieces I found in all my bits and pieces of junk. I got a lot of stuff in this garage. Okay, I'm getting prepped for the paint. I've masked out the LEDs to keep all the paint off of it. I've taken off the connection hardware, and I've slid on this heat shrinkable tubing. I'm going to shrink it down to size, and then once that's done, I'll be able to paint it the same color as the rest of the light. After that, we're ready for wiring. All right, so we're getting very close to finishing this up. It's all painted. The heat shrink is shrunk. We just let this dry for a few hours, and then we'll get onto the wiring, attach the mounting hardware, and that's that. All right, so the next step, the paint is dry. I've got some red wire and some green wire, solid core. I'm going to run these up the center of the tubing and pull them out the other end to come up this way and that way. One green will be the ground, the red will be the positive. And so to work that in, I'll use my hemostats again to reach inside here and pull that out. If I need to wiggle the wires around, just a little miniature screwdriver. So I won't bore you with the details. I'm just going to go ahead and do it and show you the results afterwards. Okay, so moving right along. It didn't take long to put the wires in, especially these hemostats really helped. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the wires back even with the end of the strips. I'm going to do the negative over here, positive on this side, because the solder are both to the same side. These tabs are so close that it just doesn't pay. It's too hard. So the positive, if you can see it, is right there. The negative's on the other side, but these are all commoned up. So I can do the negative right there. So that'll be the next step. Also on the back, I've also taken off the masking tape, obviously, so I can bear the LEDs. Over here, I've left a nice long pigtail, so I can put a connector on there, a switch, whatever, but I think I'm going to use a connector. And to stabilize the wire, because he's moving back and forth, I'm going to put some hot glue right down the middle right here, just to keep the wires from moving around. So that'll stabilize everything, act as a strain relief. So far so good. We're going to move on, and once I get the connector on, I put the mounting hardware, and we're done. One thing that occurred to me is that because the pipe is round and the LED tape is flat, there's no surface to really attach the LED to the surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hot glue gun. I'm just going to tack it down in the corners just to keep it in place. Otherwise, it's just going to fall apart. All right, so let's just give this a couple of spot tacks. Just a little bit there and a little bit on each side. Just to hold it, enough to hold it in place. Put some down here. And a little piece there. It doesn't matter where I put it. I just don't want to get it on the LED, that's all. There we go. That's all we have to do. I love all the little strings you get. So that's really about it. All right, so now we're all tacked down. Now it's time to actually solder the wires to the LED. So the next thing I have to do is I have to trim these wires back to about here on each end, strip off a little bit of the insulation on the tip and solder it down. So I'm not going to show you the soldering because it might be a little tricky, but at least cutting it. Let's grab the wire right about there. I'll cut slightly above where I've grabbed it. Gives me a little bit of extra to trim off later. And that looks about right. Do the same over here. Let's see, this has to be about this long. So we'll cut it just a little bit above it. We'll strip it off and trim it back. There we go. So that's all taken care of. So first I'll take my wire strippers that's set for 22 gauge wire, so I don't yank it out of its holder. Grab it there and just pull the insulation off. Same thing over here. Okay, grab that and pull the insulation off. All right. Now we're ready to solder. I'm going to go ahead and just do the solder without showing it on video because it might be a little tricky to get down in there. One thing I will do though is I have to strain relieve these wires. So I'm going to take my hot glue gun again and I'm going to put just a little blob of hot glue down inside here. Hold this steady. Just fill that up. That's going to act to stabilize the wiring so it doesn't move around and eventually fatigue on me. And that'll be a strain relief also. So that looks pretty good. We'll let that dry. So next I'm going to solder that down. I've done some final assembly work. I've got the wires soldered. I've encased the two little wires in some heat shrink to stiffen it up, give it a little strength. I've added a 5mm circular connector for a DC power supply. Now the connection hardware, if you notice, has a little angle on it, and I'll show you why I did that. That's actually kind of a cool little idea for mounting it. So I bought this nice little 12-volt power supply from Amazon. It's about $8, I guess. It's got a mating connector. That's a 3.5mm that goes into the 5.5mm circular. So I'm going to plug this in, and we're going to see if the light illuminates. So let's do that. Let's put this in the socket. There we go. And connector going in, and eureka, we have light. Look at that. It's like downtown. On the back of my frame, I have two picture hangers. I got the one that came with the frame. I also put this one on right here because I think it's a little stronger and it'll hold better. And I want to hold from the frame, not the cardboard. And now this piece right here slides right down into those two to kind of hold it steady. And the reason for the angle, you can see right here, is that that bend makes this stop right there so that I can push the light out. I can bend it a little bit. So now I have a light that looks like this. So let's turn it on and see what it looks like. Here we go. We're now lit up. That, I think, looks pretty good. And as you look at it from the bottom, of course, the light isn't in the way. You're actually going to see it up like this. And the light just kind of blends in with the frame. So I like that. It's much better than the first solution I had, which was to have a ring of LEDs around the outside here, and it overlit it like I showed in the previous photo. So pretty cool, and I think we're done. So we'll wrap that up, and this has been a fun project. I really like this one. I have the meteorite slice mounted on the wall now. This is what it looked like without the light. So with the new light in there, here's the results. It just pops. The Woodman-Sutton pattern comes out, all the contrast shows. You see much more detail. I'm really happy with the results. This is a good project. So with that, I think I'll wrap it up. Well, I'm very happy with the results of this project. It's doing the job very nicely, and I think it came out pretty good. Not bad for a piece of sprinkler pipe. So, see you next time. Bye.